He moaned other women's names during sex. I froze, but he smiled, shrugging and saying, "Don't make it so dramatic, I didn't cheat." At that moment, I suddenly understood. The marriage ended quietly. The next day, when he kissed my cheek, I have decided to leave.
Welcome to Airless's Romance Stories. Read the entire novel in one go. Message or comment to tell me what kind of story you'd like to read. Subscribe to the channel for daily updates. Airless reminds you, the story begins now.
In that suspended moment, the world narrowed to the sound of his voice echoing in my ears. Ariana. It wasn't a shout or a cry of passion. It was a murmur, intimate and effortless. The kind that slips out when something is so ingrained, it bypasses thought. My body, still entangled with his, went rigid. The heat between us evaporated in an instant, replaced by a chilling void that seeped into my bones. I thought I had misheard at first. The hum of the air conditioner was a constant drone in our bedroom, masking the subtle creaks of the house settling at night. Perhaps it was that, some auditory illusion, a distortion born of fatigue after a long day with the kids. But no, the name hung there, undeniable, like a confession whispered in the dark. Ariana slipped out of his mouth like muscle memory, soft and familiar. This is the voice he has said too many times before. I realized with a sinking dread, it wasn't just a name, it was a relic from a past. He'd never fully buried, surfacing in our most vulnerable moment. The room was completely silent now, save for the whir of the ceiling fan above us, slicing the air into fragments that mirrored the shattering inside me. My hands were wrapped around his hair, fingers that had been pulling him closer in desire, now clenched in shock. Just seconds ago, the atmosphere had been charged with that rare spark we'd managed to rekindle after a hectic week. The kids finally asleep, the house quiet, our bodies seeking connection in the dim glow of the bedside lamp. But now, the weather in the room had suddenly turned cold. A frost settling over my skin despite the summer warmth pressing against the windows. He blinked up at me, his eyes registering the shift, realizing what he had said. But he didn't panic, nor did he apologize immediately, scrambling to undo the damage. Instead, an awkward smile flashed across his face. The kind he reserved for diffusing tension at family gatherings, or when he'd forgotten to pick up milk on the way home. It was disarming in its casualness, as if this were a minor faux pas, like mixing up the kids' lunchboxes. "Lyra, please," he said, his tone light, almost teasing. "Do you know who she is?" "Oh, come on." Oh, I knew who she was. Ariana, the ex who'd texted him last Christmas, her message lighting up his phone screen while we trimmed the tree with our children, their laughter filling the living room. "Miss the old times," it had read, punctuated by a heart emoji that twisted something sharp in my gut even then. I'd confronted him about it over eggnog that night, my voice low to avoid waking the kids. "It is nothing," he'd assured me, his hand on my knee under the blanket. "Just nostalgia. She is ancient history." But history, I now understood, wasn't as buried as he'd claimed. It lingered, waiting for moments like this to resurface, eroding the foundation we'd built. This is what my husband Lake said, as if it were a casual slip, nothing more than calling the wrong coffee order at our favorite cafe. I didn't scream or throw anything. I wasn't the type for histrionics. I just lay there. My body still pressed against his, but my mind miles away, staring at the ceiling fan as it cut the silence into fragments. Each rotation seemed to echo the questions swirling in my head. How many times had this happened before? In the quiet hours when I was asleep beside him, did her name dance on his lips in dreams? During our early years when passion was frequent and unbridled, had he ever caught himself mid-whisper, correcting it before I noticed? The emotional weight pressed down, a tangled mess of hurt, betrayal, and the slow unraveling of trust that had been fraying for years, though I'd refused to see it. My name is Brianna Winters. Lyra to him, a pet name from our dating days when he'd called me his guiding light during a starry night picnic. I am 38 years old this year, a mother navigating the chaos of PTA meetings, soccer practices, and a part-time job in marketing that keeps my mind sharp amid the domestic blur. Last Tuesday night, my marriage quietly ended, though the legal dissolution wouldn't come for several months. Lake and I had been married for 9 years, together for nearly 11, a timeline that once felt like a triumph. We met in our mid-20s at a mutual friend's barbecue, where his easy charm and quick wit drew me in, like a moth to flame. Back then, he was ambitious, full of dreams about climbing the corporate ladder, and I was the supportive partner, cheering him on while building my own career. We'd survived the whirlwind of early love, the adjustments of cohabitation, the joys and trials of parenthood. Our 2 children, one 8, the other 6, were the glue that held us, their laughter a reminder of why we'd fought through the rough patches. We used to joke that we'd survived the wild 20s, those years of late nights and spontaneous adventures, only to thrive in our 30s with stability and routine. "We made it," he'd say, clinking glasses over takeout on the couch after the kids were in bed. But as it turned out, this was no joke. It was a foreshadowing, a subtle admission that the passion had dimmed, replaced by complacency. The emotional entanglement between us had grown complex over time. Love intertwined with resentment, affection shadowed by unspoken grievances. I'd overlooked his growing distance, attributing it to work stress or the demands of fatherhood. He'd pull away during arguments, retreating into silence, leaving me to bridge the gap. "You are too sensitive," he'd say, a phrase that had become his shield, deflecting any attempt to address the cracks. And now, this, her name on his lips, exposed the depth of our disconnect, the way his heart had wandered while mine stayed anchored. I slowly sat up, pulling the sheet up to my chest like a shield, the fabric a thin barrier against the vulnerability I felt. The motion felt deliberate, a quiet assertion of boundaries in a space that had once been sacred. "Who is Ariana?" I asked, my voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of pain. I already knew, but hearing him admit it would force the truth into the open, stripping away the illusions I'd clung to. His gaze quickly shifted away, avoiding the weight of my stare as he propped himself up on his elbows. "Lyra, you are overreacting," he sighed, his tone dismissive, as if my reaction were the problem, not his slip. "People make mistakes sometimes." I stared at him, the man I'd vowed to love through better and worse now reduced to platitudes. "Do you mean you sometimes make mistakes like this?" The words hung between us, heavy with accusation. Our emotional bond, once a tapestry of shared dreams and intimate secrets, now felt frayed beyond repair. I'd given him my youth, my trust, bore his children, and in return, he'd kept a piece of his heart reserved for her. Lake ran a hand through his hair, his frustration mounting as if I were unreasonable for not brushing it off. "It is no big deal. I didn't even think of her at the time. It just came out like that." "Because her name is often on your lips," I whispered. The realization crystallizing, flashbacks assaulted me. The way he'd sometimes pause during conversations, his eyes distant, the unexplained late nights. At the office that stretched into mornings. The Christmas text I'd tried to forget, convincing myself it was harmless. Our relationship had been built on love, but sustained by my willingness to ignore the signs, to prioritize harmony over truth. Now, the emotional imbalance was glaring. He minimized his faults while expecting me to absorb the hurt. He groaned. "My God, you're too sensitive. It's just a name, Lyra." A name means everything, I thought, when you've forgotten the right person. It wasn't just a word, it was a symbol of where his affections truly lay, a betrayal that cut deeper than physical infidelity. Just then, he rolled over, turning his back to me as if the discussion were beneath him. "Can you please stop making things so dramatic? You know I love you." I did not answer, because I suddenly realized that love shouldn't sound so cold and heartless, tossed out like a consolation prize. True love was patient, attentive, the way he'd been in our early days, planning surprise dates or holding me through postpartum doubts. But over time, it had morphed into something transactional. His declarations came only when challenged, laced with defensiveness rather than sincerity. The emotional labor had always fallen on me, planning family outings, mediating his moods, forgiving the unforgivable, no more. He fell asleep quickly, his breathing evening out into the familiar rhythm that had once lulled me to rest. I didn't. I tossed and turned in bed, the sheets twisting around my legs like restraints, carefully tracing the cracks in the ceiling with my eyes. Each fissure seemed like a broken line in our story, small at first, widening over time. Among things that were once powerful, our vows, our shared history, the fractures had become irreparable. Memories surfaced unbidden, our wedding day, when he'd looked at me with tears in his eyes, promising eternity. The birth of our first child, his hand squeezing mine through every contraction, lazy Sundays with the kids piled on the couch, laughter echoing. But interspersed were the shadows, the way he'd dismiss my concerns about his work hours, the growing emotional distance, the times I'd felt like an afterthought. At 3 a.m, unable to bear the suffocating quiet any longer, I slipped out of bed and padded barefoot to the garage. The fluorescent light flickered on with a hum, casting stark shadows over the cluttered space. The smell of cardboard and dust was surprisingly comforting, a reminder of impermanence amid the chaos of life. Lake's gym equipment gathered dust in the corner, dumbbells and a treadmill he'd bought with grand intentions of getting back in shape after our second child, but rarely used. His college trophies lined a shelf, gleaming faintly under the light, symbols of a youth he'd clung to while I moved forward. I ran my finger lightly over the top of a moving box, labeled Fragile Items No. 1. We hadn't opened it since our last move 5 years ago when we'd upgraded from our cramped apartment to this suburban home, a symbol of our success. The word fragile lingered in my mind until sunrise, a poignant metaphor for our marriage handled carelessly, now shattered beyond repair. As I sifted through the boxes, memories of our emotional journey flooded back. The joy of our engagement, the strain of early parenthood when sleep deprivation tested our bond, the quiet resentments that built when he'd prioritize work over family time. I'd always been the fixer, the one who smoothed things over. But now, the weight of that role felt unbearable. At 8 a.m, Lake stumbled into the kitchen, his hair tousled, eyes bleary from sleep. I was making pancakes for the kids, the sizzle of batter on the griddle a familiar routine that grounded me amid the turmoil. He kissed my cheek as if nothing had happened, the gesture mechanical, devoid of the warmth it once held. The taste of butter on the air made me nauseous, a physical manifestation of the emotional sickness brewing inside. He noticed my silence as he poured himself a cup of coffee, leaning against the counter with casual ease. "You are so quiet this morning." I set down the spatula, turning to face him. "I am thinking." "About what?" He sipped his coffee, his tone light, as if last night's revelation was already forgotten. "About trust," I said softly, my voice steady despite the storm within. "And how to reclaim it when someone shows you their true colors." He frowned, setting the mug down with a clink. "You are not really angry about last night, are you? It was a slip-up. You called me by your ex's name, Lake, during sex." The words felt raw, exposing the depth of my hurt, our emotional connection. Once a source of strength, now felt like a chain, binding me to someone who no longer valued it. He shrugged, pouring more coffee. "I didn't cheat. You are making it sound like a crime." At that moment, something deep inside me quietly broke, not out of anger, but out of clarity. The emotional entanglement that had defined us, love mixed with codependency, affection overshadowed by neglect, unraveled. I'd spent years rationalizing his behavior, convincing myself that his "I love yous" outweighed the dismissals. But no more. "You are right," I said softly, flipping a pancake with deliberate calm. "This isn't a crime." He smiled, thinking he'd diffused the tension, picking up his mug again. "See, no big deal." "But this is a kind of confession," I thought. "You've just told me where your heart truly is. Divided, unwilling to confront the pain you've caused." The realization brought a strange peace. The fog of denial lifted, revealing a path forward without him. He raised the cup halfway to his lips, then paused, his brow furrowing. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, wiping the counter with calm, steady motions, "that I've seen enough. Our marriage isn't what I thought it was. The love we had, it has been eroding for years, and last night was the final crack." He opened his mouth, probably to find more excuses, to deflect as he always did, blaming my sensitivity or claiming stress from work. But the children ran in then, their laughter filling the kitchen like a balm, asking for syrup and extra chocolate chips. The conversation ended there, suspended in the midst of domestic normalcy. As I served breakfast, watching their innocent faces light up, a fierce protectiveness surged through me. Our emotional bond as a family had been strained by his actions. I wouldn't let it break them too. That morning, something new was born in my heart. Sharp resolve, solid determination to reclaim my life. At 9:05 a.m., after dropping the kids at school with hugs and promises of ice cream later, I sat in the car parked outside the house, gripping the steering wheel. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked like someone I used to know. A version of me who'd believed patience could heal all wounds, who'd forgiven too easily to keep the peace. She'd compromised her dreams for his, muted her voice to avoid conflict, loved him through the emotional droughts. But that woman was fading. In her place was someone ready to fight for herself. I took out my phone, my fingers steady as I texted my good friend Sienna, the real estate agent who'd helped us buy this house years ago, a symbol of our shared future that now felt like a relic of the past. "Fee, you still in touch with that moving company?" Asterisk her reply came quickly. "Faye, why? Moving, asterisk Faye, not me, him." Asterisk a pause, then, "Faye, honey, what happened?" Asterisk I didn't answer the question immediately. Some things don't need explanation in the heat of the moment, they just need action to process the emotional upheaval. Instead, I typed, "Faye, can you arrange a full-service move today? I want everything packed and out by sunset." Asterisk silence stretched for a minute. Then her response, "Faye, can it done, I'll handle the details." "You okay?" Asterisk Faye getting there. Asterisk I replied, the words carrying the weight of my evolving emotions, from heartbreak to empowerment. Lake didn't get home until very late that night. The front door clicking open around 10 p.m., he smelled faintly of cologne, but it wasn't his own. A subtle, floral note that didn't belong in our home, hinting at where he'd been. The emotional distance between us had grown so vast that this new evidence of infidelity barely registered as surprise. It was confirmation of what I'd already known in my heart. I didn't say anything. I just watched him eat the cold dinner I'd left on the counter, scrolling through his phone absent-mindedly, as if the previous night's revelation hadn't shattered our world. He looked up once, noticing my gaze from the doorway. "Rough day at work," he offered casually, as if that explained his lateness, his scent, everything. The excuse was a familiar one, a thread in the tapestry of our emotional disconnection. He'd use work as a shield, avoiding deeper conversations about us. I nodded, tracing patterns on the doorframe with my finger, my mind already miles ahead. The emotional gulf felt insurmountable now, a chasm widened by his indifference and my newfound resolve. He'd always been good at compartmentalizing, work stress here, family obligations there, past loves tucked away like old letters in a drawer. But I could see it clearly. The man I'd married had drifted, his heart divided while mine had stayed loyal, bearing the brunt of the imbalance. After the kids were asleep, their soft breaths a soothing rhythm through the baby monitor, I stood in the hallway for a long time, listening through their cracked doors. Maya, 8 and full of questions, had asked earlier why Daddy was late again. Samuel, 6 and endlessly energetic, had fallen asleep clutching his favorite stuffed bear. They were my anchors, the pure, untainted love that kept me grounded amid the storm. But staying in this marriage wouldn't protect them. It would teach them to accept less, to ignore the emotional red flags that had plagued my own relationship. I went back to our bedroom, the site where my marriage had fractured just 24 hours ago. The scent of betrayal still lingered faintly on the sheets, a ghost of what had been our intimate sanctuary turned sour. I took a notebook out of the drawer, the pages crisp and waiting, and started making a list, all his belongings in the house. Shoes lined up in the closet, the ones he'd worn on our first date, clothes folded in drawers, including the shirt I'd bought him for his promotion, dumbbells in the garage, symbols of unfulfilled promises, his laptop on the nightstand, password, protected with secrets I no longer cared to uncover. Even his mother's ugly vase in the living room, the one he'd insisted on keeping despite my gentle protests, a relic of his family ties that now felt like an intrusion. As I wrote, emotional memories surfaced. The vase had been a wedding gift, accompanied by his mother's backhanded compliment about how I'd tame her wild son. I'd smiled through it, as I did with so many things, prioritizing harmony over my discomfort. But no more. By the time I finished the list, it was almost dawn, the first light creeping through the curtains. I closed the notebook and looked up at the ceiling again. The same cracks, the same silence. But this time, I didn't lie there broken, drowning in the emotional wreckage. I'd been waiting for morning, for the movers to arrive. Because if another woman's name could slip so easily from his lips, then perhaps it was time to deliver him, and all his baggage, to her doorstep, closing the chapter on our tangled emotions once and for all. The feeling of the morning light was different now, cleansing, almost purifying, cold but clarifying. It illuminated the path ahead. I was ready to rebuild, one unpacked box at a time, freeing myself from the emotional chains that had held me captive. Lake left for work around 8:30 a.m., humming a tune under his breath as he grabbed his keys. He still carried that nonchalant arrogance, the same swagger that had once drawn me to him but now repelled me. He even kissed my forehead before leaving the house, the gesture habitual and empty, as if he hadn't ruined our marriage the night before with his careless words. The emotional disconnect was stark. He moved through the morning like nothing had changed, while I felt the shift in every fiber of my being. I breathed a sigh of relief the moment his car pulled out of the lane, the sound of the engine fading into the distance. My hands did not tremble as I watched from the window. My voice did not tremble when I thought about what came next. I was furious. Yes, a deep, simmering anger born of years of overlooked slights. But it was controlled, channeled into action. A strange calm had settled over me after the breakthrough point, the emotional fog lifting to reveal clarity. I took out my phone and called Sienna, my voice steady as the line connected. "Good morning," she said cautiously, her tone laced with concern from our earlier texts. "Are you sure, Brianna?" "Yes," I replied. No hesitation. "Can you arrange for a moving company to provide full service today? I hope he packs everything up and takes it with him before sunset." Silence on the other end. Then her tone became stern and loyal. "I will make this happen." At 10:15 a.m., 2 moving trucks stopped in front of my house, their engines rumbling like a promise of change. A group of 4 men stood on the porch, waiting with professional efficiency. They seemed somewhat hesitant at first, glancing around the quiet suburban neighborhood. "Madam, which room would you like to start with?" the foreman asked, clipboard in hand. "In the master bedroom," I told them, everything on his side of the wardrobe marked with blue sticky notes. They nodded and began to work, their movements methodical. Every sound of the tape tearing, the box sliding on the floor, the drawer opening. It felt like my heartbeat sinking into calm. As his items disappeared into the boxes, I felt a heavy burden lifted from my chest, the emotional weight of our shared life lightening with each sealed carton. The shirts he'd worn on anniversaries, the watch I'd gifted him for his birthday. Each one, a reminder of happier times now packed away, freeing space for new beginnings. Sienna arrived around noon with 2 cups of iced coffee, her eyes wide as she surveyed the organized chaos. "Girl, this is simply amazing." I smiled smugly, the expression feeling genuine for the first time in days. The foreman walked toward us with his clipboard. "Where are these boxes going?" I reached into my bag and pulled out a printed address, Ariana Williams, number 24 Cedar Lane, the woman whose name my husband had whispered like a secret prayer. "Everything is there. Don't forget the note stuck to the front of the box." He glanced at the envelope I'd left on it, the correct name, a final touch of irony, and nodded without question. Moving companies never pry, they just execute. As they loaded the goods onto the truck, I watched with a mix of liberation and lingering sorrow. This wasn't just about his things, it was about untangling the emotional knots that had bound us. The love that had soured, the trust eroded by indifference. At 2:30 p.m., the house was half empty. The sound of change resounded through the halls, echoing the shift in my heart. Sienna looked at me with a frown. "Are you sure you don't want to wait? Maybe you could talk to him first." I shook my head. He told me to stop dwelling on it. This is my process of overcoming difficulties, reclaiming the emotional space he took for granted. By 3 p.m., his last belongings also disappeared down the street, neatly stuffed into the truck's belly. The ensuing silence was almost sacred, the house breathing easier without the clutter of our fractured past. Then the locksmith arrived, a middle-aged woman named Renee, her toolkit slung over her shoulder. When I explained the situation, she gave me a meaningful smile. "Changing locks after a verbal slip. Up?" she asked, her tone knowing. I blinked. "How did you know?" she chuckled, twisting the wrench. "Honey, I've been doing this job for 20 years. I've seen everything. The man who accidentally texted his ex, the woman who accidentally packed her husband's things. You are not crazy, You are complete. For the first time in 2 days, I smiled. A real one, born from the emotional release of taking control. She handed me the new key as soon as she finished, cool and silvery, like a brand new beginning. Keep this safe, new locks, and new components. At 5:47 p.m., my phone started vibrating on the counter lake. I let it ring for a while before it stopped. Then, the first text message arrived. Faye Lake, where did all my stuff go? Asterisk another. Faith, a neighbor, said that a moving company truck was parked at the house. Lyra, what are you doing? Asterisk, and another. Faye, what did you do? Asterisk, I'd been waiting for a long time, hoping these words hurt as much as his had, to reflect the feelings at that time when he looked into my eyes and dismissed my pain. At 6 p.m. sharp, I typed out my reply. Falira, your item was delivered by mistake. To Ariana's address. This will happen. Asterisk 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, my phone rang. I answered, letting the silence stretch. What is wrong with you? He yelled, his voice a mix of anger and disbelief. The children may hear, I thought, but they were at a play date with Sienna. They're with my dad, I know, I said calmly. That is why I arranged this today. You moved my things to my ex's house. Are you crazy? It was just an accident, he stammered. The emotional defensiveness I'd come to know so well surfacing. Sometimes people mix up addresses, names, and heart-shaped patterns, I whispered, echoing his nonchalance from that night. The words carried the weight of our fractured bond, the love I'd poured in, only to receive indifference in return. This is not funny, he muttered angrily. You can't just kick me out like this. This is my house too. I chuckled softly. Actually, no. This is my house. I bought it before I got married, remember? Brianna lives there, and she has now opened the door. This door has always been open to my husband, although I don't know who you are. Don't do this, you've already done it. I hung up the phone 20 minutes later, the conversation devolving into his pleas and my quiet resolve. The emotional tug of war we'd engaged in for years, me seeking connection, him offering excuses, ended with a click. The car headlights swept across the lane, then banged loudly. Brianna opened that damn door. I slowly walked forward and unlocked the door, but only opened it halfway. He stood there, his hair disheveled, his eyes wild with fury and confusion. Where have my things been delivered? I asked softly, already knowing. I nodded, indicating Ariana's house. It seems more reasonable for you to call out her name. Take inventory of your belongings. Instead, go find the right person. He stared at me, speechless. You're insane, he finally said. No, I whispered. I found it. The emotional clarity I'd gained, the recognition that our love had been one-sided for too long, empowered me. I was about to close the door, but then I stopped. Oh, I changed the locks before you tried using the key. This sometimes happens, when people forget which home is their own. The door clicked shut. His voice broke in the night. You might regret it, but regret is left to those who remain. I turned off the lights, placed the new key by the bed, and had a good night's sleep for the first time in months. I was deeply immersed in it, and no one's name appeared in my dream. The morning after delivery, the feeling of the sunrise I saw when I woke up was one of emptiness in the best way. The refrigerator hummed softly, the echo of my footsteps through the halls a reminder of space reclaimed. There were no sighs, nor any complaints about the burnt bread or the socks missing. Peace also has a voice. I realized what you need most is to be free from someone who doesn't respect you. I was sipping my coffee when my phone vibrated. This time it wasn't Lake, but his father, Richard. Brianna, he said, his voice sharp as gravel, without any build-up. What did you do to my son, God? I gazed calmly out the window. Good morning to you too. Richard doesn't play games. You humiliated him. The neighbors all saw the truck. Oh my God, you moved all his things to another woman's house. Accidents can happen any time, I said softly, the irony not lost on me. This is no joke. You've made your whole family look bad. Your son did this, I replied, the emotional hurt from years of in-law dismissals bubbling up. Richard had always favored Lake, excusing his flaws while questioning mine. You are overreacting. It is just a name. This is not just a name, I said. and then hung up the phone, the emotional weight of their enabling lifting as I cut the line. Around 10 a.m., my phone started ringing nonstop. Messages from mutual friends, Lake's colleagues, even the parent-teacher association's group chat. Fayema, Lyra, did you really kick Lake out? Asterisk Faylira, define kick out. Asterisk Fayema, the whole town was buzzing with discussion. You really sent his things to Ariana's house. Asterisk I have returned the property to its rightful owner. The message quickly went viral in the mother's chat group. I could almost hear people gasping through the screen, the emotional support from some thumbs up emojis, private messages of you go girl, contrasted with the judgment from others, but it bolstered my resolve. At 2 p.m., the universe decided to transcend itself. My phone rang again. It was an unknown number. Hello, Lyra. A woman's voice trembled with anger. It is Katie, Ariana's girlfriend. Or rather, ex-girlfriend now. Your husband's trash is piled up on her lawn. Oh, things are getting better, she yelled at him, and Katie continued talking to both of them. My boyfriend is sorry. The ex is trying to figure out why strangers' furniture was placed in our driveway. I try to control my volume. You should probably tell Ariana to stop entertaining guests. She didn't mention the married man part. After a moment of silence, Katie whistled softly. Oh, she is sure to learn something today. 3 p.m. Lake called again, his voice booming like thunder. Lyra, you've ruined my life. I neatly packed it into the box I had prepared. You caused all of this by yourself. You think you are very smart. Ariana's girlfriend dumped her. Her landlord called because those things were blocking the sidewalk. You make me laugh out loud. That is what you did when you called her name. He fell silent. Then his voice lowered. You will pay the price for this, I roughly said. But at least I could repay peacefully, and then I hung up the phone. That night, Sienna and I sat on the porch. The air was filled with the scent of rain. She asked, Do you think you'll calm down? No, I said, but I will. It feels good, doesn't it? I pondered for a moment. It feels like a door has been closed that should have been locked many years ago. We have remained silent ever since, watching the thunderclouds roll on the horizon. Somewhere, Lake was furious about the consequences of his actions. But here, in my quiet little house, I finally felt safe enough to breathe again after 9 years of living on thin ice. Everything, peace will not last long. When narcissists begin to lose control, by the second week, Lake's phone calls had stopped. But silence is not pity. It is like the kind of person who trembles before a storm. I should have expected this. People like him never admit defeat. They kept rewriting the story until they sounded like victims themselves. It all started with my job. I was in a meeting at the time, and my boss, Marion, knocked on my office door. Her former enthusiasm has vanished. Lyra, can we talk? I followed her into the conference room. The blinds are closed. My stomach suddenly sank. This morning I received a strange voice message, she began cautiously. From someone who claims to be your husband. I remained unfazed. I gently corrected my ex-husband. She nodded and said, Your emotions are unstable. You seem to have had a breakdown. Customer accounts should not be processed. I leaned back in my chair. Did he mention the reason? No, she said in a low voice. But I've known you for many years, Lyra. I don't believe a single word of it. Of course, the Human Resources Department still needs to keep a record of it, I said. Marion hesitated for a moment. Do you want me to forward the recording to you? Yes, I said. Thank you for believing me. When I left her office, I realized that Lake had not stopped fighting. He has just changed the battlefield. That night, Sienna brought the takeout. We sat at my kitchen island. I watched her as I replayed her voice message. His voice betrayed a false concern. Hi everyone, I am Lake Debery. I am worried about my wife's mental state. She has been behaving strangely lately. They locked me out of the house during the move. I think she needs professional help before she hurt herself or other people. Sienna slammed the chopsticks to the ground. It is unbelievable that he is using reason as a weapon. I forced a smile. Let him try. I documented every step I took. You can still hear his feigned concern. This sent chills down my spine. He has been manipulating me with the same tone for years. Then it is Sunday, the day of worship. I haven't been there since the explosion. But my children really enjoy Sunday school, so I decided to bring them with me. I dressed simply without makeup and made no attempt to disguise myself. Then we passed through that familiar wooden door, holding their little hands. People turned their heads, whispering as they followed like shadows. Then I saw him, Lake, sitting in the front row. He casually draped his arm over another woman's shoulder, not Ariana. Some people know that the next replacement will have a bright smile and a head of neat hair. I felt my jaw tighten, but I didn't look away. The pastor began to talk about forgiveness and accountability. The irony almost made me laugh out loud. At the end of the service, Lake deliberately stopped me near the steps outside. He muttered to himself, still pretending to be a saint. I looked him straight in the eyes. At least, I will not confuse my prayers with someone else's name. Several people heard whispers which grew louder and louder. He took a step closer, his voice low but venomous. "You are making yourself look bad." "No," I said softly. "You did that a few months ago." He hesitated. I walked past him. The children held my hand tightly. 2 nights later, the storm truly arrived. After getting off work, I drove my car into the driveway and then froze. The garage door was splattered with red spray paint. The 2 words, written in bold, eye-catching characters, were filled with anger, "That bitch." The jar continued to roll lazily on the ground. My breathing was intermittent. It wasn't fear, but disbelief that he had fallen to such a low point. I checked the security camera footage, and he was indeed there. Lake pulled up the hood of his hoodie and glanced back. The 2 o'clock position is clearly visible in the photo. 6 a.m. I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The calm feeling before justice begins. I called the police. When the police arrived, I showed them the video. One of them, a woman in her 40s, was whistling softly. "Your husband X," I corrected him again. She asked if she wanted to file a lawsuit. "Yes," I said. I felt it was time. Her lips twitched slightly, seemingly with an expression of approval. My ex did something similar. When I found out he was cheating on me, everyone said I was crazy. Filing a lawsuit was the wisest decision I ever made. For the first time, I no longer felt lonely. The following day, Lake was arrested at his workplace. I didn't expect to feel anything. But when I saw the suspect's photo online that night, I did. It was neither victory nor mercy, only an end. An hour later, my phone rang. "Richard, you've arrested him again," he shouted. "He damaged my property." I said, "To be fair, this is just whitewashing. This is harassment." "You drove him to this point," I said softly. He drove straight into a police car. He hung up on me. By this time, rumors and gossip had already spread, like wildfire. Someone I haven't contacted in years sent me a message. Some people defended him, but most did not. The best one came from one of his old colleagues. "Girl, your ex suddenly shows up at your workplace, like a reality show that got out of control." People called him Paint Romeo. I laughed until I cried. This time I really cried. Not the kind of confession he used to force me to admit during arguments. The children went to bed early that night. The house fell silent again. In the garage, those red letters still gleamed, but I didn't wipe them off. However, I stood there. I gently ran my fingers over the surface and whispered a thank you. Because that night, the person who broke me down also saved me. At that moment, I realized that forgiving those who hurt you does not bring true peace. The answer lies in forgiving yourself for lingering for so long. That evening, when we sat down to eat dinner, me and the children, Nathan and his daughter, Maya suddenly burst into laughter. "He calls you Lyra, not Mom." Nathan grinned and put on an apologetic expression. "My promise is bad. I know your name." Everyone laughed, including me, but in that tiny moment, something deep inside me has finally shut down completely. Because he is a man who remembers your name. Your value is your place at the dinner table. This is everything Lake has never given me. After dinner, I coaxed the children to bed. Half asleep, Samuel murmured, "Daddy still loves you." You know, I kissed his forehead. "It is okay. I don't need him." He smiled slightly. "Dad says you are happier now, and you seem more relaxed." "Maybe I am," I whispered. That night, everyone was asleep, and I sat alone on the porch. The air was filled with the scent of pine and cinnamon. I thought about the journey I had taken, from a woman frozen by a name to the lady who now shoulders a heavy responsibility. I am not a victim. I am not a survivor. I am who I am. This is also the first time in a long time. For a long time, that will be enough. The courthouse was filled with the smell of old papers and tense sweat, the air of ending disguised as a beginning. 3 months after the moving incident, I'd finally arrived. Sitting in a slightly wobbly chair, every breath felt measured. Lake sat across the aisle, wearing a perfectly pressed suit that no longer suited him. He has lost weight. Perhaps it was his arrogant and conceited personality that made him so proud. His lawyer is no longer with him. A woman named Diane Morrison, the local bulldog of the divorce lawyer world. He leaned close to his ear and whispered some sharp words. "You have kept all the receipts." "I know," I said it. Even though my heart was beating very fast, I spent several weeks preparing screenshots from the surveillance footage, arrest report text messages. There were even statements from school counselors confirming that he tried 2 unannounced visits. I no longer entered this world as an abandoned wife. I went in as a mother protecting her child. The bailiffs referred to this case as D. Berry versus D. Berry, guardianship and property hearing. I stood up when the judge entered. A woman nearing 70 years old, that look could melt metal. She glanced at the documents in front of her, then looked up. "Let's start with the husband's petition," she said coldly. "Mr. Debery, your lawyer, Diane Ross, speaks as smoothly as silk. Your Honor, my client requests full custody, alimony and retention of marital home. He was wrongly driven away by his wife. Debery, impulsive behavior and emotional manipulation." I almost burst out laughing, illegally deported. He hasn't even paid off his mortgage. The judge nodded. "And your client's response, ma'am Debery?" "Tom Station." "Your Honor, this residence belongs to the lady. Debery's premarital property. We have evidence of emotional infidelity, property damage, harassment, and harm to children. The defendant has a criminal record for the aforementioned acts of vandalism." The judge turned to Lake and asked, "Is that accurate?" Lake straightened his body. "That is a misunderstand. I was very emotional at the time." He painted insulting words on his ex-wife's garage. "It is an emotion." "Yes," the judge replied decisively. Sienna sat quietly behind me. She chuckled, then quickly covered her mouth. "Next comes cross-examination." Diana attempted to distort the facts. "Debery," she said with a smile that resembled a snake, "do you consider yourself a vengeful person?" "No," I said, "but you really are. In fact, you possess all of your husband's belongings, removed from your shared residence." He then delivered it to his ex-girlfriend's residence. "Yes, that is correct." A soft gasp was heard in the courtroom. Deanna's smile became even brighter. "You find this behavior reasonable?" "I think this is very symbolic," I said in a calm tone. "When my husband called me by the wrong name, calling me by his ex-wife's name instead, in intimate relationships. He told me to stop dwelling on it. I simply returned what belonged to him to that woman. He clearly still had a place in his mind." Even the court stenographer stopped typing. Diana blinked. "So this is revenge," I said. "That is a clear line of thinking." Then Tom stood up. "Your Honor, please allow me to introduce evidence." B. He submitted a printed screenshot, Lake and Ariana's text messages. A few months before the incident, the two had an intimate and ambiguous date. One of them read, "I still miss you. Sometimes I wonder if I got married too quickly. She is just protecting your passion." The atmosphere in the courtroom changed. Even Diana's expression wavered. The judge looked at Lake. He stammered, "Would you be willing to explain this?" Those were all old friendly messages. Tom held up another piece of paper. The timestamp shows that it was 3 weeks before he called her name. Your Honor, Lake's face turned pale. Ultimately, destroying the video became the final straw that broke the camel's back. Tom played the song on the small screen. He was right there, Lake wearing a hoodie and holding a spray paint can. The red paint gleamed under the porch lights. The judge watched silently, then looked at him. "Mr. Debery, do you understand what problems this behavior might cause in the court?" He rubbed his temples. I was clearly not myself at that moment. When the evidence ends, the courtroom was silent. Apart from the faint hum of the ceiling fan, there was nothing else. The judge crossed his arms. "Debery, do you have any comments to make to the court before my ruling?" I slowly stood up. My voice trembled, but my words were firm. For many years, I have believed that marriage means endurance. If I had remained calm and tolerant, the situation might have been different. You will eventually be rewarded. But without respect, forgiveness is meaningless. When he called me by the wrong name, calling me by another woman's name, I realized something. I built my own life, being with someone who thinks my pain is a joke. I glanced at Lake, but he wouldn't look me in the eye. I said he ruined the family, not that I didn't. I simply refused to continue pretending that we have a good relationship. The judge nodded. "Thank you, Mrs. Debery." After a long period of silence, the verdict was delivered. Temporary primary guardianship was awarded to the wife. Mr. Debergy's visits were supervised and carried out by Debergy. Until further review, the residence remains Mrs. Debery's only property. The request for alimony was denied. Pay child support to the applicant. Lake yelled, "This is ridiculous." She made me look like a madwoman. The judge stared at him with cold eyes. "Sir, you don't need her help." Soft laughter filled the room. Outside the courthouse canopy, Lake cornered me. His tie was askew, and his face was marked with anger. "You've sown discord, making my children my enemies," he hissed. "No," I said softly. "This is what you did when you betrayed their mother." "It is not over yet," he growled. "Actually, as I said, stepping aside would have ended it completely. This document has officially come into effect." He stared at me for a long time. Then he stormed into the parking lot. Sienna took my arm and joined me. "You handled it like a queen," she whispered. I smiled slightly. The queens do not shout, they signed. That night, the house felt lighter than it had in years. The children are sleeping upstairs. Faint red lettering still remains on the garage door, but I didn't wipe them off. However, I stood there. I gently ran my fingers over the surface and whispered a thank you. Because that night, the person who broke me down also saved me. At that moment, I realized that forgiving those who hurt you does not bring true peace. The answer lies in forgiving yourself for lingering for so long. That evening, when we sat down to eat dinner, me and the children, Nathan and his daughter, Maya suddenly burst into laughter. "He calls you Lyra, not Mom." Nathan grinned and put on an apologetic expression. "My promise is bad, I know your name." Everyone laughed, including me, but in that tiny moment, something deep inside me has finally shut down completely. Because he is a man who remembers your name, your value is your place at the dinner table. This is everything Lake has never given me. After dinner, I coaxed the children to bed, half asleep. Samuel murmured, "Daddy still loves you." You know, I kissed his forehead. "It is okay. I don't need him." He smiled slightly. "Dad says, you are happier now, and you seem more relaxed." "Maybe I am," I whispered. That night, everyone was asleep, and I sat alone on the porch. The air was filled with the scent of pine and cinnamon. I thought about the journey I had taken. From a woman frozen by a name to the lady who now shoulders a heavy responsibility. I am not a victim. I am not a survivor. I am who I am. This is also the first time in a long time. For a long time, that will be enough. The courthouse was filled with the smell of old papers and tense sweat. The air of ending disguised as a beginning. 3 months after the moving incident, I'd finally arrived. Sitting in a slightly wobbly chair, every breath felt measured. Lake sat across the aisle, wearing a perfectly pressed suit that no longer suited him. He has lost weight. Perhaps it was his arrogant and conceited personality that made him so proud. His lawyer is no longer with him, a woman named Diane Morrison, the local bulldog of the divorce lawyer world. He leaned close to his ear and whispered some sharp words. He nodded, but didn't look me in the eye. Me lawyer, Tom, leaned closer to me. "Remember the facts, not your feelings. You have kept all the receipts." I know I said it, even though my heart was beating very fast. I spent several weeks preparing screenshots from the surveillance footage, arrest report text messages. There were even statements from school counselors, confirming that he tried to unannounced visits. I no longer entered this world as an abandoned wife. I went in as a mother protecting her child. The bailiffs referred to this case as D. Barry versus D. Barry guardianship and property hearing. I stood up when the judge entered, a woman nearing 70 years old. That look could melt metal. She glanced at the documents in front of her, then looked up. Let's start with the husband's petition, she said coldly. Mr. Debery, your lawyer, Diane Ross, speaks as smoothly as silk. Your Honor, my client requests full custody, alimony and retention of marital home. He was wrongly driven away by his wife, Debery, impulsive behavior and emotional manipulation. I almost burst out laughing. Illegally deported. He hasn't even paid off his mortgage. The judge nodded. And your client's response, ma'am? Debery, Tom Station? Your Honor, this residence belongs to the lady. Debery's premarital property. We have evidence of emotional infidelity, property damage, harassment, and harm to children. The defendant has a criminal record for the aforementioned acts of vandalism. The judge turned to Lake and asked, "Is that accurate?" Lake straightened his body. "That is a misunderstand. I was very emotional at the time." He painted insulting words on his ex-wife's garage. "It is an emotion." "Yes," the judge replied decisively. Sienna sat quietly behind me. She chuckled, then quickly covered her mouth. Next comes cross-examination. Diana attempted to distort the facts. "Debery," she said with a smile that resembled a snake. "Do you consider yourself a vengeful person?" "No," I said, "but you really are. In fact, you possess all of your husband's belongings, removed from your shared residence. He then delivered it to his ex-girlfriend's residence." "Yes, that is correct." A soft gasp was heard in the courtroom. Diana's smile became even brighter. "You find this behavior reasonable?" "I think this is very symbolic," I said in a calm tone. "When my husband called me by the wrong name, calling me by his ex-wife's name instead. In intimate relationships, he told me to stop dwelling on it. I simply returned what belonged to him to that woman. He clearly still had a place in his mind." Even the court stenographer stopped typing. Diana blinked. "So this is revenge," I said. "That is a clear line of thinking." Then Tom stood up. "Your Honor, please allow me to introduce evidence B." He submitted a printed screenshot, Lake and Ariana's text messages. A few months before the incident, the two had an intimate and ambiguous date. One of them read, "I still miss you. Sometimes I wonder if I got married too quickly. She is just protecting your passion." The atmosphere in the courtroom changed. Even Diana's expression wavered. The judge looked at Lake. He stammered, "Would you be willing to explain this?" Those were all old, friendly messages. Tom held up another piece of paper. The timestamp shows that it was 3 weeks before he called her name. "Your Honor." Lake's face turned pale. Ultimately, destroying the video became the final straw that broke the camel's back. Tom played the song on the small screen. He was right there, Lake wearing a hoodie and holding a spray paint can. The red paint gleamed under the porch lights. The judge watched silently, then looked at him. "Mr. Debery, do you understand what problems this behavior might cause in the court?" He rubbed his temples. I was clearly not myself at that moment. When the evidence ends, the courtroom was silent. Apart from the faint hum of the ceiling fan, there was nothing else. The judge crossed his arms. "Debery, do you have any comments to make to the court before my ruling?" I slowly stood up. My voice trembled, but my words were firm. For many years, I have believed that marriage means endurance. If I had remained calm and tolerant, the situation might have been different. You will eventually be rewarded, but without respect, forgiveness is meaningless. When he called me by the wrong name, calling me by another woman's name, I realized something. I built my own life, being with someone who thinks my pain is a joke. I glanced at Lake, but he wouldn't look me in the eye. I said he ruined the family, not that I didn't. I simply refused to continue pretending that we have a good relationship. The judge nodded. "Thank you, Mrs. Debery." After a long period of silence, the verdict was delivered. Temporary primary guardianship was awarded to the wife. Mr. Debergy's visits were supervised and carried out by Debergy until further review. The residence remains Mrs. Debery's only property. The request for alimony was denied. "Pay child support to the applicant." Lake yelled, "This is ridiculous." She made me look like a madwoman. The judge stared at him with cold eyes. "Sir, you don't need her help." Soft laughter filled the room. Outside the courthouse canopy, Lake cornered me. His tie was askew, and his face was marked with anger. "You've sown discord, making my children my enemies," he hissed. "No," I said softly. This is what you did when you betrayed their mother. It is not over yet, he growled. Actually, as I said, stepping aside would have ended it completely. This document has officially come into effect. He stared at me for a long time. Then he stormed into the parking lot. Sienna took my arm and joined me. You handled it like a queen, she whispered. I smiled slightly. The queens do not shout, they signed. That night, the house felt lighter than it had in years. The children are sleeping upstairs. Faint red lettering still remains on the garage door, but I didn't wipe them off. However, I stood there. I gently ran my fingers over the surface and whispered a thank you, because that night, the person who broke me down also saved me. At that moment, I realized that forgiving those who hurt you does not bring true peace. The answer lies in forgiving yourself for lingering for so long. That evening, when we sat down to eat dinner, me and the children, Nathan and his daughter, Maya suddenly burst into laughter. He calls you Lyra, not Mom. Nathan grinned and put on an apologetic expression. My promise is bad. I know your name. Everyone laughed, including me, but in that tiny moment, something deep inside me has finally shut down completely, because he is a man who remembers your name. Your value is your place at the dinner table. This is everything Lake has never given me. After dinner, I coaxed the children to bed. Half asleep, Samuel murmured, Daddy still loves you. You know, I kissed his forehead. It is okay, I don't need him. He smiled slightly. Dad says you are happier now, and you seem more relaxed. Maybe I am, I whispered. That night, everyone was asleep, and I sat alone on the porch. The air was filled with the scent of pine and cinnamon. I thought about the journey I had taken. From a woman frozen by a name to the lady who now shoulders a heavy responsibility. I am not a victim. I am not a survivor. I am who I am. This is also the first time in a long time. For a long time, that will be enough.